Have you ever felt that you needed to be famous, rich, or a hero to be successful in life? Can we reconceive those ideas to redefine success? Hi, this is Takatoshi Shibaima, host of the Future Design Podcast. I run a blockchain solutions company, and I'm always looking for new technologies and ideas to improve our lives and the world around us. Today I have Carol Sanford, a leading regenerative business thought leader who's been advising Fortune 500 companies like DuPont, Intel, Colgate, just to name a few, for 40 years. She talks to us about her new book, Regenerative Life, and questions how can we re-examine our part in society, and how can we find the right role for us to play in. So stick around to the end. And in your new book, Regenerative Life, what kind of common misconceptions of society have you realized that led you to write this book?
Well, I did a research project. I'm a senior fellow at Babson College of Social Innovation. And I wanted to understand, and I was particularly asked by people who were individuals, because all my stories in the first four books I have, for the most part, are about corporations being able to think in a more systemic whole way. And I had individuals who were saying, but can I do anything? I'm a low level supervisor or a mid level manager or what do you call it, a sole contributor. Can I do anything? And I had to tell you the truth, I had always thought, not much. And I would say to them, keep getting promoted, because if you don't have the authority, you can't do much. But over my years of working, watched individuals, and I kept seeing what was the difference in what they did. And I realized they were playing, in addition to their job, like their career, like I'm a supervisor, I'm an accountant, they were doing something else. And I now call those meta roles, where you're kind of standing above and saying, what's really needed right now? And so I pulled together and invited in over 100 people. The original number was close to 150. We finally, over the year we did the research, discovered that the major thing that matters is you have to become more conscious of what is the essence, I call it, of what's needed right now. If you have, like right now in the quarantine, what is the essence of what is needed if you're an accountant or a supervisor or a school teacher or wherever you are? And you might say, for example, it's something like a spirit resource, because the spirit of people, the spirit of customers, of our suppliers, all begin to collapse in a certain environment. But if you don't understand what it means to raise spirit, then what you do is you do false reassurance. Well, I'll be okay, or most of us will be. And so what really became clear to me is the people who really made a difference, not just succeeded, as you say, for themselves, but helped the system move, were those people who could take on these roles. So I decided to figure out, well, what are those? And they're a little like archetypes. I was raised by a grandfather who was, and I tell a lot of this story in the book, who was a half Mohawk Indian, which when you were in New York, that was the original territory of all the Iroquois. And one of the things he always said to me was, do what's right, but not always the way you would always do it. And I thought, what does he mean by that? It took me a long time to understand that I could still be me, but I needed to look at what was going on outside. I needed to be relevant. So just to summarize this question, I brought together this 100 people. I educated them about the roles that turned out to be 9 of them that seem to help societies and cultures move and become cohesive, become whole in what they do, and did the research to discover what was the essence of that role and what made it need to show up somewhere, like the spirit resource right now. And I taught people what the essence of that role was. They went off into their lives, and there were business owners, heads of radio, public radio. We had journalists. We had economists who were helping shape. And I had people from all over the world, by the way. and we had them go try out those roles in situations. And they came back and reported it changed their life to see that if they were holding it, a way to be in a particular situation, it could be amazing. And this is quite normal in many indigenous cultures where you have things like shaman and clowns, and people know that that's not just their job, it's a role. So I think in answer to your question, what was really a surprise to me, and I feel like I should apologize for all the years I said it wasn't possible, but what I discovered was if people could learn to read the situation in front of them, not for the problem that was there, but for the potential and what was needed. And they could, it was like putting on a cape, and but not a superhero cape, like an ordinary cape, and stepping in. And I found these 9 roles that we now are teaching people and seem to be making a huge difference in organizations, in neighborhoods, in families. And that was the big shift for me from the first 4 books.
And before we go into that 9 roles that you think that people need to think about, you mentioned about the idea of being heroic or being a
Yeah.
leader constantly is really making us think that that's the success or that's how we need to live life. And you think that is a misconception, that we need to think about our role in our life, in our world, in our planetary, cosmetarian life, that it is a different way that we have to think about things. And can you describe to us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
I can. And I have personal experience of having figured this out where when I was a child, and maybe many children are like this, I read the comic books and Wonder Woman, and I read Superman, Batman. And they always rushed in to save the day for everyone. And I started as a child thinking I was going to rescue all the dogs that got picked up and taken away. It was so small. But over time, I became more and more sort of driving myself to do something huge and change everything. And I used to say, when I grow up, I'm going to do something really important. And I have done really important things, but I watched my blood pressure when I couldn't figure out how to do it. I worked when I was at Berkeley getting arrested, trying to stop the war in Vietnam. I did work with the civil rights movement and, going into the South, being a white ally where that made sense. And I realized that I was then going back to my normal life, and I was not really every day living a way that changed that which was around me. That this new book is about understanding that you're not actually going somewhere and doing something different or changing career or joining something bigger like a movement. You can actually make an enormous difference by how you play your everyday role. So let's talk about, for example, if you're in a role that has something to do with design, and like you could design products or you could design processes. And if you came to really understand that design was about being able to have things that were hard to understand, if you could find what really brought out the greatest potential for everybody who used it, instead of thinking about, well, I create beautiful things or beautiful processes. You said, what is the essence of being a designer? It's really about helping people find potential they didn't know they had. That can change so many people's lives. It will change yours also. It'll change the people you work with. And so I call it the non-heroic approach. And it's healthier. I think it affects more people. It's actually doable for every human being. And so that's why I have been, and nowadays I watch more and more hero movies and more women being heroes. And I think, but then you go back to your career or your normal life, or you wait for a hero. Why don't we learn to be non-heroic change agents by how we do every day? So this book is about taking on these meta roles in a way that you don't have to be heroic, you just have to be conscious, which in some ways is harder.
Yeah, usually, I guess a lot of these heroic movies, it's always painted in black and white, and
Yeah,
either you're good, you're bad, and there's really nothing in between. But our lives is so much in the gray matter that it's hardly black and white.
yeah.
So thinking about, choosing being a heroic character or finding a heroic character in our life is doesn't really lead to a lot of happiness. And I find that because you don't achieve that, people fall into depression or feel like you're not succeeding in life. And I think that it's causing a lot of stress and depression in everyday lives. So I think we need to kind of change the way we think about how we contribute to society, not in a way that stands out so much into the public, because as we know, we're in the era of social media. Everybody wants to stand out, and an education system tells you got to be successful, make money, be the change maker, the trailblazer, whatever it is. But most of the times, we don't really actually turn out to be that. So, do we end up living like we're actually a failure in life? We don't want to live like that either, right? So,
No.
how? Yeah, exactly. So, how do we actually? So maybe this is their next question: is like those 9 roles of getting to where we should be going to.
Well, I would say we can be going to because shoulds always get us into heroic mode, right? But I understand your question. I think that I'm going to tell you what the 9 are and how they come about. But I want to add one thing to what you said about you go, I think, from pursuing success, which you can have, to fulfillment, to making a difference. And success comes with that. It's not an end in itself. And so these 9 roles really matter. So let me start with describing that there are 3 sets of 3. And these represent a lot of what it takes to make a social system, including a family or a city, work. The first set I call the initiators. And the initiators are the ones who, as we get something up off the ground and something new being birthed, is it prepared? Is it seeded well? Is it nourished in a way that it's likely to succeed? And those 3 roles are the parent. Why? Of course, that makes sense. Do children get developed in a way that they are going to be able to be in society the way that they can contribute and make a difference? The second of those 3 roles is the one I mentioned a moment ago, the designer. We don't, most of us know the designer for the things we use every day that make our lives work. But the designer in a product sense, but also in a process sense, like you are a designer, you design how a podcast is going to work, how you're going to ask questions, how you're going to frame it. The quality of design that you're able to conceive of and execute is a very important part of initiating what people get out of this. And then the third role is what I call earth tender. And I named her after Kat Anderson, who wrote a wonderful book called Tending the Wild, that said there are certain people who feel so close to living systems, to natural systems particularly, that they are able to be a voice for them when we don't speak the same language as natural systems. And as a result, they end up becoming farmers or advocates in a way that makes sure we are caring for the home that we share with other non living entities. So, those 3 roles, if someone doesn't step up to those, we have a system that breaks down. Children don't do well. The designs that we get waste materials are not well conceived of. We don't understand Earth and what our role is. So those 3 roles we spent time teaching. But the interesting thing is, and I'll give you the other 6 in a moment. The interesting thing is that those can happen in any job. So we can actually end up parenting a lot of things that don't have to do with our children. I personally raised 8 children. I gave birth to 2. And that process was about taking on, not, I didn't foster, I didn't adopt them. I call them my chosen children. And that process of supporting them, and they were later teenagers, helped them go off into life knowing who they were. And I didn't know I was going to do that. My children brought them home. So we can parent many things. We can, even if we're an accountant, be a designer, even and if we're a school teacher, designing curriculum. In Earth Tender, every one of us should learn to be. So they're meta roles, they're above our other work. The second set of roles are what I call the manifestors. They go do things in the world. They're the ones we know about. They shape what happens. And those three roles are the citizen, because if we don't really work on the way democracy works, that's one thing is I loved about your other podcast too, that conversation comes up. What do we do to help democracy work? Most of us don't know how to be citizens, or we think we don't matter, or we don't figure out what role we need to play above what our job is every day. And so having people act, and that's what the manifestors are, they take action in the world. The second one is the entrepreneur, which clearly you are, many of your guests are. I play and take on that role, but it is not all I do in the world. I write books, and so I play some of the other roles. But entrepreneurs really help us shift paradigm. They help disrupt what we normally think. And they do that not by preparing us to do it, although we might play that role. They do it by doing it themselves. So they're a manifestor. They create a business. They create a product offering that shatters what we thought was possible. And we know some of the big names, but every one of us can do that. And then the third manifestor role is the economic shaper. And if we ever wanted to understand what that means, right, we can look at right now as our economies become incredibly volatile. And they're volatile because of what was our thinking about how you structure an economy. So it has very little resilience built in. It affects some people really well, even in horrific times, and it crashes the world for many others. But the economic shapers are people like the banks, the economists, but we also can be economic shapers by how we spend our money. When you were being an investor, you were being an economic shaper. If we understand that every time we invest, we are shaping the world we all live in, that would be so important. And that's what you were speaking to at the beginning. You could see, and you could see the difference between Japan and the US and how the economy had been shaped. Knowing those roles who make those decisions, who help shape that, who raise those conversations is another manifestor. So we need those people because they take action, where the initiators prepare people to take action. There is a third set of roles, and those I call the disruptors. You know, if we don't have things that come in and knock us out of our way of seeing the world and our way of behaving, we just go on automatic. We become automatons. In fact, disruption, like right now, and uncertainty is so important. I mean, people get mad at me when I say this, but I am so thrilled we have this much disruption, because you can't bring about change in culture or engagement if you don't have disruption. And when I go work with companies, or used to, I don't get on planes and go anywhere anymore, but the first thing you have to do is to enter with a disruptive process. And if you don't disrupt, people doesn't create a crack in the facade. And there are three of those roles. The first one is the educator. And I call myself a regenerative paradigm educator, because I believe the most important work for disruption comes out of that opportunity to help develop people, develop what they can see. This conversation we're having, I'm holding more the educator in mind than any other role. And the questions you're asking me invite that. Many people who are in teaching roles don't hold that, though. They hold it not as a disruptor, but as, let's see how much knowledge I have, I can give you, and then I'll tell you how well you did when you take a test. And there are some cultures which are really, really good at that. I mean, Singapore is very, very good at that. They have curriculum developers. You have whole institutions that are very good at making sure everybody can pass the test. But to me, the educator role really is about developing intelligence, less so than knowledge. Now, you need the knowledge, but you can go get the knowledge. You can figure it out. Learning how to think and how intelligence actually works is a foundational role which we can take on. The second of the disruptor roles. So we got the educator over here coming in, and on the other side, we have the media content creator. You commented on, and I really agree, how social media has everyone fighting for a space. It also has TV, radio, podcast stations fighting for a space as an institution. And they don't always think about that we are creating a worldview for people. Are we actually helping them become more discerning? Are we helping them understand the systemic effects of choices we're making? When I write books, and one of the reasons my books continuously win awards and bestseller lists is I believe they help people become discerning for themselves. I try not to tell people I know the answer. My epistemology, which is how people learn and know, is that you can know. It's a capability process and creating a way for you to engage, and you can know, and you can come to trust that you know, and you won't worry about fake news, and you won't worry about finding the smartest person who can tell you. I teach in universities, and my opening line there is, don't trust me. Never believe offhand anything I tell you. Don't take notes about what I say. Take notes about what you're thinking. And I always ask them to come up with their own idea before I give them mine. That is a process which is a combination of an educator and a media content creator to give people the capacity to learn to see in a whole way what the truth is on the whole system, which you clearly are a systems thinker and you're a media content creator. The last of those disruptive roles is the spirit resource. I have membership communities, and I have people out of Japan and out of New Zealand, Australia, and the kind of the time zone. Although I've had people from Singapore join my communities. They're up at 2:00 in the morning. That tells you the dedication, right? Because I'm teaching people how you take whatever you're working on and you do it in a way it is a resource to the spirit of the world, to people in the world, because it's so easy to lose faith and to give up and lose hope. And we have a record depression around the globe right now. How is it we engage with people in a way that they know how to manage their own energy, their mental energy, their emotional energy, and choose how they're going to be? That role is often given to a third party, to my great mentor, or to a teacher I have, or my therapist, or my church. And it doesn't mean you might not go engage with those. But if you want to be a disruptor of the kind of restraining energy that can tamp down our spirit, then learning to be a spirit resource is it's disrupting the pattern of degradation. So that took a little while, but you've got the initial, the capability and the foundation, the manifestors who step out into the world and they do things, and then it changes the pattern. And then you have the disruptors who will not let us stay asleep. And those are the 9 roles that we all can play in a non-heroic way, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in the jobs that we have, that could change society and therefore make the world work better for all living, or human and non-human living entities.
And nowadays, we talk a lot about AI disrupting our jobs and taking away jobs that we know today and be automated away. And we're going to be left with jobs that we actually don't even know exist yet. And for the young people who are growing up today, whether it be the millennials are having already grown up quite a bit already, but the Gen Zs or even the children who are in high school, junior high school, and all these kids are looking at a disrupted future. What kind of jobs can I get? How can I prepare myself to get a job once this educational system is over? So we think about many things. How can we uplift our human values, and how can we create jobs that are more tailored towards human value than actually production? And what resonates to me quite a lot about what you were saying is you broke it down into very small pieces about what people can do to contribute to the society, the initiators, the manifestors, disruptors, the educationers. I mean, there are very important roles in our society that machines can't actually do for us, right? Because we were already educated as being the producers. We have to make things, reproduce things and cookie cut many things so that we can provide more and more of the same things to everybody. But now it's more tailored. We have a lot of jobs that are very tailored to personal tastes, and what you say in those 9 roles can also be all fit into that genre as well. So
Wow.
what kind of message that can we give to our young people about what they should be thinking about when they start thinking about what kind of careers that they want in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, two things. One is start with who you are. Start with your essence. Start with what calls you. If you found, even when you were very young, you were constantly being an entertainer, you ought to plan on doing that no matter how hard that is. I had a grandson who's at the high end, I guess, of the generation after the millennials. When he was a year and a half old, he was working with numbers. He began to figure out how to code when he was a very young child and play with math. Go with that, even if it means you have to figure out how you get there. Because I think starting with what career you can have and make money in will create a miserable life for you. You must come from your essence because that will sustain you through everything. It will also give you the courage and the direction. So that may sound strange because most people do say, well, find out what your aptitudes are. No, find out where your heart is. Find out where your essence is, what it is driven to do. And that is one of the things I do with, I have a huge number of millennials who are in my membership groups. Because of this, they went, oh, yeah, no, the reason I'm suffering is I'm trying to figure out where I can fit in. No, figure out where you can be you and you don't have to fit. So that's the first thing. The second thing is worry a little less about which career, because if you choose something that fits and calls to you, now there are things you can do to really make that work. And as you say, AI is going to be a part of our future, and it's going to do some good things, and we're going to have to manage some of the bad things. And you can help do that. But these roles are not one additional thing you do. It is learning to do all of them because you will become so sought after. And this is one of the things my research shows. If you can see what role is needed, if you can see, I'm watching the company I'm in, I'm watching the department I'm in, I'm watching the university I'm in, I'm watching the school system or the government I'm in, needing to be disrupted, and you've been working, and by the way, I have ways that people can come do this for buying a few books from me. You can go through the work that the uh, action research participants went through with me. You can learn to play those roles. Then you can say, which disruptor role? Well, it looks to me like they're not thinking well enough, I might say. And so I know something about how you educate a group, even though what I am is a low level supervisor or maybe just a coder in a group or a full stack engineer. I'm highly developed with AI, but I don't want to be known only for that. I want to be known for bringing the kind of spirit and work that I am in a community to bring, or that maybe there's a need for some media to be created. What if I created a little documentary that helped us look at what we're doing and it would change the conversation? Or I might say, well, what we really need is more prep with the young people who are coming in. I'm going to step into the parenting role, which helps people become self-determining. But the way I do that is going to give people the courage and the capability for the next generation. If you will need to eventually do all 9 of those roles somewhere, but some of them you will feel more called to than others. So one of the reasons I did this book and the education programs I have to go with it, many of which are online. In fact, even the live ones are live like you and I are right now. That will give you people so much respect for you because, as you said, there's no machine, I don't care how smart it is, that can read, and it's certainly in our lifetime. I can't say forever, but I bet you forever, that will be able to see which of these roles are needed. So you can go be that full stack engineer and be very, very good at it. But you will never be displaced if you're first being yourself, connecting with your own essence, the way you do it, and understanding the meta role so you can bring more as it's needed. So that would be my advice.
And also with the older people who are in their 40s, 50s, obviously they need to upskill as well. Would you give the same type of advice as well?
I am one of those people, right? Except I'm a little older than the group you mentioned. Um, I realized some years ago that if I continued to be in the role that I was in, talking about things that businesses wanted me to talk about, doing what others wanted me to do, that I would never ever realize my potential. And I don't think there's any such thing as full potential because I keep being amazed about how much smarter I can get every year. And next year I will be 80 years old. All right. So what you said there's no limit on the other side. You have one precious life. I mean, maybe we get to go around again, we get to choose, but in this one precious life, as Mary Oliver said, what are we going to do with it? And so I don't care how old you are. And I do this with I do it with my 9-year-old granddaughter. I ask, what excites you? Or I watch what she's doing and I can see she loves putting color together. She'll go redecorate her whole room. She will put on clothes that you can see she's designing. And what I can do is engage her in finding a way to explore that. So it's age is irrelevant. Courage at any time is what it takes. Go back and find out who you are, what your essence is. Then create a way to find a place to express that. And then work on all of these 9 meta roles, bring them in when needed, get better at them over time. Come join me in where all you have to do is get online and watch some videos that I recorded. And just so people know I'm not selling something, all you have to do that is tell me you're going to buy 5 books. $5. And what you can have is a year-long set of material that can get you started. And give away a few of those books because I'm doing this. I mean, if you've talked to many authors or written a book yourself, you know you don't make money off books. You make message with books. You get an opportunity to help change people's lives. So I have watched now thousands of people who I've worked with over the years change their belief in themselves, change their understanding how their organization can work. I've worked with so many entrepreneurs all the way up to, I work with high levels in Google, CEO of DuPont, Colgate around the world. I have never seen a person that didn't benefit. So maybe that's encompassing enough. For what I'm saying, I think is about being human.
Thank you. Yeah, I really resonate with that as well. And more, I think that people should start to be thinking about not about success and everything that's monetary driven, but how you can fulfill your life spiritually and how you can really live out this life the best way you could. And having this idea of regenerative life, I really would love to read this book when it comes out. I think it was in July.
Yeah, in July you can get a hard copy, but I'm going to send you, if I can figure out how to do it, a digital version right now. We'll get you one. And don't let me forget. Come back. I want to give you a gift, Takatoshi. You have a wonderful spirit. I love talking with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this talk, and yeah, maybe in the next episode we can talk about business as well, because it is the Future Design podcast, and we talk about not just the human aspect or personal, but we want to talk about business as well. So I really enjoyed reading your book about how you work with Colgate and DuPont and Seven Generations and all these companies that were trying to provide more to their community, more to the earth, rather than just profits for themselves. So this is another topic, especially for my financial mindset that I've been in the hedge fund industry so long. I want to see a different aspect of corporate mentality that's not purely focused on money.
I would love to have that conversation with you because that is work I still do. I have membership communities with businesses. I now am online doing things with people that are in food companies, agriculture companies, because of what's going on. We now all understand how important our food system is. But the same thing is true if you are in the entertainment industry or everywhere. We have to rethink how we run business. And my books are always filled with what I call case stories, where at least every book has at least 15 stories where we've done what we're talking about. How do you help a business become system conscious, which you were describing? Understand it is about working with Earth in a way that it makes sense. And don't call her the Earth, because that's like the wife, right? Or the husband. Earth has a name, and the communities we live in have a name, and the investors who support us have a name, and the suppliers and each employee. And how do you design work systems? So let's have that conversation.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. So thank you very much for your time and lovely conversation that we had today.
Yes, I did too, Takatoshi. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is your host Takatoshi Shibayama. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Now, if you enjoyed or disliked the show, please let me know by writing in the comment section. The only way I can improve or add value to you is through your voices. If there are any topics that you would like me to pick up, please also let me know in the comments. I'd love to start chatting with you all. And if you would like to continue watching the show, please subscribe. Thank you.